This is the first official Flagship podcast. Really excited. I know we've been talking about
Indeed.
this podcast for a while. I'm really stoked to obviously talk with Fred and Dom, my two partners here at Amiral. And I think conversation is going to be in the good Montreal style, franglais. So we're going to do both French and English. So for the people listening, a bit of a warning.
Bonjour, aïe.
Yeah. We'll try and avoid language controversies, but I think it was important because obviously we're Quebec, have it in both languages. Where do we start? So I think a first natural point of the conversation is how we all met, right? Like first we'll talk about why we're doing this, but I think maybe a first question for us to kind of answer and dive into is how do we know each other? Maybe I'll throw it to you two first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Dom and I met, 2014?
2014, yeah.
Something like that. So, and Amiral it's awesome because I wanted to work with Dom since a long time. We almost worked together because in 2014, I was raising for my second company. That was kind of my second career, right? I spent a good 10, 12 years in big companies in telecom, and then the next 15 in startups, starting companies in tech. And this is how we met. So Dom was at Expand at the time. I was getting ready to raise a Series A for Nubo, and we really connected.
Super well, actually.
Yeah, and like
I remember our first discussion. It was really nice.
Yeah. I came back from that discussion saying, okay, so these guys will not just cut a check; they'll help, and so that was super exciting for us. But Expand was in between two funds. Not in between two chairs, in between two funds. So
yeah, it was so tough. It was really tough.
And so timing wasn't good, and we ended up accepting another term sheet. But basically, we stay connected since that time. So it's quite nice. Actually, stars were aligning right last summer, right?
Yeah, exactly. We reconnected last summer, and we, I mean, the stars were aligned. You know when you. You're in between two jobs. It's happening just a few times in life, right? And when two guys are both between two jobs and they're discussing a new opportunity, then there might be something. And I mean, I have to go back to 2014 between two funds, as Fred said. I still remember that day when I first met Fred, and when you meet someone, you meet a fantastic entrepreneur with a fantastic project, and you're convinced about the future of that company. I mean, of course, ideally you would write a term sheet, get the fund, and work with that guy with his team, but or you can say no, but it is so difficult. When you want to do something, you want to do a deal because you have met like a fantastic entrepreneur, and you simply can't because you're between two funds. You don't have the money. So it was a weird feeling at the time, and.
But unlike others, and I'm interrupting here, but unlike others, he told me he was not able to do a term sheet, right? So because this is classic in the VC land and startup land, is a lot of investors will tell you, yeah, maybe let's meet again. Oh, can I have access to the data room? And they just have you hanging until they're ready. But for them, it was like, okay, like this is great. We're in a position to do anything. Let's keep in touch. And I think that honesty was also, okay, geez, like he's not bullshitting me, right? So that's great.
Yeah, I think it's in the VC world, I mean, in business in general, right? Honesty, being frank, being, blunt if needed. I mean, I think it's important. I mean, it's not all about business. It's also about human, about people, about potentially building something with a culture, with different talents, and I think that the very first natural step is honesty, right? So, that's my way of doing things, and I think that the three of us we fundamentally agree with that, right?
But over the years, he kept inviting me to Marvin on the Rock, and a lot of these, like, okay, we're not working together, but let's do fun stuff.
One of these days, it's coming.
Exactly,
it's coming.
so that was great. But yeah, if
it's gonna be the three of us.
Oh,
it's gonna be the three of us.
We have to pick a song. Huh?
Yeah.
I have the contracts right here, guys. So
But if I come back to last summer, like summer 22, it's kind of interesting because, as you guys know, I sold Nubo in 2019, so it was like 3 years post exit. I had spent a bit of a year off with the kids and doing just investments and like on my own and thinking, okay, this is, as we say in French, it's not structurant enough, right? I'm doing investments. I have a bunch of startups in my own portfolio, but I'd like to cut bigger checks. I think I want to have a bigger impact as a VC. And while I'm thinking this, Dom is showing up. I'm thinking he's raising for Expand 3, and in the end, I understand, no, he's also in the process of thinking about a new structure, a new entity. And I mean, it's kind of rare that two individuals who have very busy careers end up at the same place at the same time and like available with the same idea almost, right? This is because it took a month and we were both in writing a deck, right?
Yeah. And it was it was a perfect timing. My mind was at the right place. Just finishing 2 funds at Expand. I had the opportunity to work with exceptional people, including Alex, my partner at Expand, and I knew we had touched something that was super important with Expand. We had a few very nice successes, companies like Lumen Pulse, which we IPO'd, company like the Lion Electric, working with guys like FX Souvé, Marc Bédard. It is so, those guys are so amazing and you learn so much from that kind of people. But at the same time, we really realized the importance of a GP, a fund which is invested not only in capital but also in time, expertise, talent. I really felt we contributed fundamental things to those companies, and it was not all about money. And that's really the point of what we're doing, I think, with Amiral. It's contributing, investing in talented people, but working with them to build something that is much more important.
Yeah.
So that's really the thing. And when we had lunch last summer, I remember that first discussion with Fred, and I knew, that's the kind of guy I want to be doing that for the next 10, 15 years.
So here we are.
Yeah, I love your point about people, Dom, going back to how you guys met. And then obviously it was, like VC entrepreneur relationship. And you're like, oh, God damn it, I really want to invest in Nubo, but you were unable to, and you're obviously transparent. And then obviously that led to, continuing the conversation. And how I met Fred, actually, it's funny, is because, we're here recording a podcast, was because of my old podcast that I was doing at my company, PNR. And for PNR, we were running a management consulting team. It's like we're doing corporate advisory and M&A work. It's stuff that's, I say, hard to promote, hard to sell. It's
You have to find a niche, right? You have to find a specific niche that you're better than anyone at. Right?
Exactly. And then that's what we focused on was strategy and execution. And I won't do the quick pitch, but as a means of okay, well, how do we grow this company? How do we get the word out there? I was like, oh, well, why don't we start a podcast? We're meeting all these great entrepreneurs, great founders, investors. And it became a little bit when I say pet project to also just, hey, I want to meet cool companies. And I remember when I saw Nubo Series B, I think you had raised from White Star, I forget, 34 million if I'm not mistaken, or 16 million.
Series B was 16, yeah.
And
it wasn't White Star was our Series A lead. Series B, we had to go to Silicon Valley.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Because the problem we're trying to solve here, right? No one would cut a term sheet.
Yeah. Yeah, and right when I saw that announcement, I'm like, what is this company? I hadn't heard of you guys. And I just wrote to you, I'm like, hey, do you want to be on this podcast? And after the podcast, you're like, what does your company do? You're asking me. And it's like, hey, we do this thing. And it's like, that led to like doing some work together. And that's where I was like, realized, okay, Fred, A, really smart, and also B, surrounded himself with really smart people. So I found it was really cool that we had that relationship. And then just stayed in touch over years. And Dom, our paths never actually crossed, but we came close. Actually, I remember, a friend that we both know, Normand, talking about like good learnings and bad learnings from life and from business. You guys were obviously super involved with Théo Taxi, with the ups and downs that occurred. And we're like, oh, Normand approached us, hey, can you guys help out with a mandate for Théo? It never kind of coalesced, but it came close. We might have met back then, but I'd always heard good things about you, even before we actually met in person. So I think my personal story of like, well, I wanted to move into the investment world. I'm not quite sure how. And then like when I reconnected with Fred, I think it was last December. It's not even been a year. I think when you were pitching me Amiral.
We were not yet pitching LPs, but we knew, because as you just mentioned, we got to know each other like first through the podcast. Then I hired your firm for a value creation mandate, right? So this was a time when Nubo was signing bigger and bigger customers, namely in Japan, and we had this huge customer, like $30 billion revenue in Japan, sending a ton of data to the platform, and the customer had to figure out how will they take the insights from the AI platform, and it was in the HVAC domain, and execute on a value strategy. So it was basically Nectar and his team were helping Nubo create a value at the customer in Japan, right? So this was a kind of complex environment, but they were so professional that they got us access to like chief revenue officer of this $30 billion revenue company, right? And basically who was opening his book and saying, help us execute on these AI insights. So from that experience, and I'm saying that because this is kind of how we got back in touch. When Dom and I started putting kind of the skeleton of Amiral together, it was clear that the success of this fund and this initiative would be get better deal flow, privileged access to the best deals. So that's one thing. But what do you do post-investments? How do you create value post-investments? That's absolutely critical in the success of a fund like ours. And I immediately thought, okay, I need to catch up with Nectar because that's what he does in life, right? And so this is how we connected back in December 22, right?
Yeah. So even less than a year, and it's funny. What's the expression? There's years where nothing happens, and then there's weeks where years happen. Yeah. So like, just how it happened on my end. It was like I was planning my exit from my old company over a year and a half. We had to find a partner, buy my shares, and I'm like, I want to tiptoe and find a way into like being an investor, kind of like you said, like a new career. I just had no idea, and I was like terrified. But I'd made my mind up. I wanted to do it. And then when you guys approached me with like, here's the mission, here's what we want to build, it was super exciting and really motivating. And maybe it's a good segue, and maybe we can switch to French, parler un peu du raison d'être. Donc, pourquoi un nouveau fonds d'investissement est nécessaire? Il n'y en a pas tellement déjà qui existent, donc j'aimerais vous entendre un peu.
Il y a certains phénomènes qu'on voit dans le marché, puis certains qui sont là depuis très, très longtemps. C'est pas que géographique, c'est très présent au Québec, c'est présent aussi au Canada. Ça l'a été aux États-Unis, mais là, il y a un enjeu qui est assez fort, je dirais, particulièrement au Québec. Puis c'est un enjeu de leadership de capital. Il y a des trous, il y a un trou dans le marché, particulièrement dans ce qu'on appelle Série A. Une compagnie en technologie comme Nubo, dans le cas de Fred, qui cherche à lever entre 3 et 20 millions aujourd'hui au Québec, va très difficilement trouver un lead investor au Québec. Donc, on se retrouve face à plusieurs situations qu'on voit, nous, qu'on qu'on a répertoriées dans une liste assez complète d'entreprises en croissance, talentueuses, qui doivent aller chercher un term sheet à l'extérieur du Québec assez rapidement. Puis dans la plupart des cas, c'est le term sheet qui va aboutir. Fred l'a vécu avec Nubo.
Complètement.
Ça vaut vraiment la peine que tu en parles. Mais Amiral, nous, clairement, on veut capitaliser sur ce phénomène-là, venir apporter une solution, ou du moins contribuer à une solution par rapport à cet enjeu-là, parce que c'est un enjeu qui est important. Puis c'est un enjeu qui vient avec des opportunités dans le marché. Donc, il y a plusieurs opportunités qu'on voit, puis nous, on veut lancer Amiral, je pense, en bonne partie pour capturer les opportunités qu'on voit.
Oui. Puis je l'ai vécu avec Nubo, en fait, pas en série A, ça s'est bien passé, puis on a eu White Star, mais en série B, impossible d'avoir une term sheet canadienne. Par contre, une fois qu'on avait une term sheet de Silicon Valley, tout le monde voulait mettre de l'argent. Tout le monde au Québec et en Ontario voulait suivre dans la term sheet. Je l'ai aussi vécu avec la compagnie précédente parce qu'on était rendu à 8-9 millions d'ARR, incapable de trouver profitable. Tu sais, 2009, fin 2009, début 2010, incapable d'avoir un investisseur. Incapable. Et donc, on a vendu trop tôt. Puis moi, ça me ramène, parce que tu nous as demandé pourquoi, puis c'est quoi la mission. Tu sais, à la base, je pense que ça revient à... Peut-être ça a l'air un peu cheesy, mais tu sais, on a tous des enfants. On veut que le Canada et le Québec, dans les prochains 10-20 ans, soient aussi prospères, qu'on ait les mêmes services sociaux, qu'on ait un meilleur service. Puis cette richesse collective-là qui est requise pour que ça arrive, ben ça passe pas en subventionnant les étrangers pour qu'ils viennent partir de business ici. Ça passe par l'entrepreneuriat. Puis malheureusement, ben on a eu des vagues d'entrepreneuriat incroyables avec les gens coutus, les bombardiers de ce monde, mais aujourd'hui, c'est en tech. Fait que ça nous prend des entrepreneurs tech. Cet écosystème-là, il a démarré dans le début des années 2000. Fait qu'on est, des teenagers en tant qu'écosystème. Donc, quand un écosystème start-up technologique démarre, ben, c'est normal que tout le focus est sur les incubateurs, les accélérateurs, les fonds pre-seed, les investissements seed, parce que le besoin est là. Fait qu'on a passé 15 ans, 16 ans, 17 ans, 18 ans à bâtir cet écosystème-là. Puis, il y a toujours des gaps, mais il est quand même en santé. Mais là, sur les 200 compagnies qu'on seed par année, là, bon an, mal an, au Canada, ceux qui ont le plus de succès et qui sont prêts pour une série A, ben, la majorité du temps, ils doivent aller à l'étranger pour avoir une term sheet. Puis, je pense que si on laisse tomber la balle dans ce moment d'inflexion-là, ben, on perd beaucoup d'équité, on perd beaucoup de possibilités de croître des sièges sociaux et des multinationales ici.
Puis des écosystèmes aussi, tu as mis le doigt sur le mot en parlant de l'écosystème de VC, mais l'écosystème qu'une entreprise peut contribuer à bâtir, c'est extrêmement important. Dans l'électrification des transports, un domaine que j'ai connu très bien, c'est un exemple extraordinaire qu'on voit, puis on voit les effets, les conséquences aujourd'hui. Il y a eu des entreprises comme Lion Électrique qui se sont développées en prenant des risques monumentaux avec des financiers. Expand, nous, on a financé Lyon. Alexandre a rencontré Marc en 2013-2014. Puis on est tombé en amour avec cette entreprise-là, bien qu'ils faisaient des autobus diesel à l'époque, mais ils avaient développé la chaîne de traction électrique complète. Ils étaient en train de tester des premiers véhicules. Lyon Électrique a pris sa place dans le marché, mais a développé tout autour tout un écosystème d'électrification des transports avec des fournisseurs, avec des chercheurs, des ingénieurs.
Exactement.
Il y a un paquet d'entreprises qui se sont créées, qui ont été développées dans le temps. Puis aujourd'hui, ben, on voit les conséquences pour le Québec d'avoir un écosystème en électrification des transports qui est gigantesque. On vient de voir l'investissement de Nordvolt. Puis c'est un peu ça les résultats. On parlait d'accueillir des étrangers. Je pense qu'il faut le faire. Puis faire des investissements massifs comme ça, il faut absolument le faire. C'est extraordinaire pour le Québec, mais est-ce que ça aurait été même possible s'il n'y avait pas eu tout un écosystème qui se mettait en place dans les 5, 6, 7 années précédentes? Je suis pas certain. Fait que l'impact de supporter même un petit nombre d'entreprises qui ont un fort potentiel, puis de protéger la propriété de ces entreprises-là, peut avoir un impact monumental en termes d'écosystème, puis de tout le ripple effect qu'il peut y avoir. Là. Ça, je pense que c'est majeur, puis c'est important qu'on le fasse, parce qu'il y a des belles entreprises qui ont besoin de soutien, puis ben, ça tombe-tu bien, on est là pour... c'est ce qu'on veut faire, on veut les supporter, puis on veut les aider.
Ouais, c'est très intéressant. Vos points sont, je trouve, super pertinents. Sur ton point, Fred, c'est la nouvelle génération d'entrepreneurs et aussi ton point d'écosystème. Ma perspective, c'est que c'est comme un secret bien caché, la technologie, mais pas si bien caché aujourd'hui. Là, mais comme la nouvelle façon que la société va être réimaginée, ça va être vraiment en partant avec la technologie. Ça va pas être avec les anciennes façons de faire, mais ça va comme transposer sur tous les secteurs de l'économie. Donc, je crois pour avoir un pays prospère, il faut qu'on investisse dans ce secteur-là, d'une façon quand même beaucoup plus sophistiquée et intense. Donc, moi, j'y crois vraiment que ça va être pour le bien, parce qu'on n'a pas le choix. Comme c'est soit nous, on va créer ces compagnies-là, ou on va être un peu assujetti aux règles des autres entreprises qui vont dominer.
Mais future is bright. Parce que, tu sais, faut quand même que, si tu mets le contexte, en 96, 97, 98, quand moi je finissais à Polytechnique, devenir entrepreneur, c'était même pas une option. You have to be crazy. Va chez Nortel, chez CAE, chez Bombardier, c'était le mantra. Aujourd'hui, puis tu sais, je suis impliqué au HEC, à Polytechnique, dans je sais pas combien d'incubateurs, d'accélérateurs. Les jeunes à l'université, les finissants, ils pensent, il y a une grosse portion qui veulent devenir entrepreneurs, puis qui ils pensent déjà, puis sont déjà en train de considérer ça comme leur choix de carrière. Fait que c'est extrêmement motivant de voir ça. Fait que c'est pas juste doom and gloom, là, c'est hey, il y a vraiment du talent, des cerveaux qui veulent se lancer là-dedans. Puis fait qu'il faut contribuer à cet écosystème-là qui les aide. Au bout de la ligne, ça prend des exemples. Personne ne va vouloir être... Personne n'est le premier. Absolument, c'est quand tu te lances dans ça, c'est parce que tu as vu d'autres le faire, tu as vu d'autres succès. Fait que on n'est pas non plus anti-exit, puis il ne faut pas que les compagnies vendent. Non, des exits, c'est correct, puis ça donne des exemples. On voit, on réinvestit dans l'écosystème, mais je pense que, as a whole, we can have more, bigger headquarters, plus de Lightspeed, plus de Coveo, plus de Shopify au Canada, c'est clair.
Ouais. OK, je ne sais pas si on va couper ça, là, mais je vais rajouter sur ta perspective. C'est comme, si j'étais le gouvernement, how do I protect my economy? Aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup de controverses alentour des médias. And je ne veux pas dire if it's right or wrong, mais clairement, le gouvernement veut protéger les médias d'ici. Mais pour quelle raison? C'est parce qu'il y a comme 2 compagnies étrangères qui sont en train de démolir le modèle d'affaires de tous les médias. So it's like, pense à un exemple dans un secteur multiplié à travers tous les secteurs. T'sais. So it's like, how do we protect the economy? Well, have the leaders here versus somewhere else. T'sais.
Yeah, but it's hard for government to pick an industry, right? And decide to invest or save an industry. Like, I'm not sure media is something we want to talk about, but like, who are they to decide that automobile or media or like what should we invest and save in? I think government's role, yes, they can provide funding to private investors who will then pick the right sectors, but I think they can do a better job being customers. Like the best investment is customer revenue, right, for a startup. So I think our governments can do a better job being faire des gros appels d'offres and make them available to startups and to tech companies here. I think they can put more incentives to the big corporates to have their own VC arm. Like where do you see corporate VCs in Canada? Like they're virtually absent compared to the US. But maybe there are incentives government can put in place for them to be more. So there's a lot of things governments can do, right? A lot.
Ouais. Ouais. C'est un bon point. Peut-être, ouais, je suis un peu trop pessimiste sur le point. Là.
Non, mais incluant aussi, je veux dire, il faut qu'on parle de ce que le gouvernement peut faire également là, pour supporter l'industrie du VC, right? Je veux dire, la question se pose pour l'ensemble des industries, là, c'est vrai. Là, bien souvent, ça commence par creating high-quality jobs, ce qui est important. Il faut le faire, puis notre gouvernement actuel le fait clairement très, très bien. Mais il y a des questions importantes qui se posent également par rapport à l'industrie du capital de risque. Au Canada, on a fait des progrès quand même assez géants depuis 20 ans. On en parlait un peu tantôt. Au Québec aussi, il y a des bel écosystème qui s'est bâti. Mais il reste qu'il y a encore beaucoup de place aujourd'hui dans le marché. Puis si on se pose la question à savoir qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour développer notre écosystème, ben je pense que la réponse, pour moi, elle est très, très claire. C'est qu'il faut supporter les nouveaux gestionnaires émergents qu'on appelle, des gens comme nous, mais il y en a d'autres également. Et ça, il y a personne de mieux placé que l'État pour donner un coup de pouce, pour aider. On en fait beaucoup déjà. Il y a des programmes, il y a des choses qui existent. Mais clairement, aujourd'hui, dans le spectrum du capital, il y a des trous. Clairement, puis nous, on a identifié un trou, puis on veut capturer l'opportunité, mais je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qu'on peut faire pour développer les gestionnaires indépendants. Il y a une culture du risque là, qui est très fragile, je pense, au Québec, au Canada, qu'on peut développer. Et puis quand il s'agit de prendre davantage de risques, bien souvent, un support de l'État peut encourager énormément puis aider à développer la situation.
Yeah, I think we're like years away also, right? I think, Fred, you mentioned it's like just in the past 20 years, how much it's already progressed and that appetite for risk. Like, I think we're all three people that are impatient. We're like, we want to progress more and faster, but it's definitely going in the right direction, right? I think it's very obvious, right? We're just impatient for it to go faster. And we spoke about, you mentioned high quality jobs, this notion of like, we're doing this to help build a more prosperous economy. And, maybe to navel gaze just a bit, I really like what we've published a few weeks ago, talking about our why, our investment thesis. So maybe I'll pitch it to you guys if you want to maybe like quickly summarize it, present it to the people listening.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I guess it starts with the fact, because it's interesting to talk about the gap because it's there and it's real. But let's not forget that the number one reason we're doing this is because plenty of entrepreneurs are knocking at our door. We're meeting them on a daily, weekly basis, and they have exciting ideas and exciting early businesses that we want to contribute to. So I think, gap or no gap, there's a flow of opportunities that we see coming and that we're excited about and we want to contribute to. So I guess that's the first point. When you think about the thesis or like the why we do this from a market standpoint, I guess we came back to like what are the challenges the enterprises will see in the next 2 decades worldwide. And when you think about this, we're kind of at a turning point in so many sectors, right? Everyone talks about the worker shortage and the supply chain issues, and like all of a sudden, like interest rates have jacked up, and there's no free capital, and that's not going to end anytime soon, right? So we're in a new cycle for that. And I invite you to go read the manifesto, but we've identified 6 big challenges that enterprises will face everywhere in developed countries, right, in the next 2 decades. And the role of technology in addressing those challenges is like mind-blowing. There's just so much potential value creation there. And obviously, and I didn't mention sustainability, right? The fact that every company out there will be assessed not only on EBITDA anymore, but EBITDA and kind of carbon emissions and footprint. So like that adds up to a number of challenges. And so when you look at that, we have certain expertise around the table here, right? So we said, okay, what pieces of technology we know really well, and not just on paper, like we rolled up our sleeves in, that have an impact on these challenges. And that's how we came up with the thesis.
Yeah, maybe to double click on what you mentioned about the thesis, and I'm obviously biased, but I think it's great having had a hand in it, because it's very like you mentioned the macro tailwinds that are proposed, like the challenges essentially, or headwinds, if you would, like not enough people. The economic cycle, we're definitely not in the area of free capital. Geopolitical tensions, we have to talk about them, right? Like this notion of buying something online for $5, having it shipped from Asia is not very, one, eco-friendly, two, not great for the local economy and environment. So having this notion of building more resilient manufacturing hubs with a technology-first mindset, it's going to happen, right? You're going to see like having boats, traverse the oceans for all your items doesn't make that much more sense, right? So we have a pretty good skill set in this country as well. When we think about electrification, like I look at Dom across the table, it's like, hey, like Lion Electric's like number 40 in terms of like largest company in Quebec. And I think it doesn't get enough press for like one of these like rising companies. And then when I look at what you did at Nubo with like, hey, like we're going to help make HVAC systems much more intelligent, more energy efficient. It's like, hey, we've done this in our careers. And I think going back to like, this is clearly where the puck is headed.
Yeah, no doubt. Several months ago, we sat the three of us and tried to put a name on this, right? Like how do we name this concept that, hey, we want the economy to be more dynamic, but it's not growth at all costs either, right? It's not, we're no longer in the days of you can scale a company by growing but losing money, right? Or you can scale and grow beyond the resources that are available on the planet, right? So I like the term you coined, Nectar. So we'll give you credit for sustainable economic dynamism. So maybe we should trademark that term. I don't know if it's relevant or available.
Let's do it.
But definitely. For us, it's any technology that helps that, right? To make the economy more dynamic, so help enterprises go through those challenges, but in a sustainable way, right? And I think when you look at the three pillars that we identified, so I'm so adamant that these three will have the biggest impact, right? And so the first one is digitalization and applied AI. So basically, all these vertical industries that are today still email, phone, pen and paper, Excel, right? So there's a ton of opportunities to bring first digitalization in those processes, right? In construction, in so many sectors, and then bring specific applied AI. So we're, I guess, less interested in the fundamental horizontal AI infrastructure and more into applying it to a specific sector. So that's going to be the first focus of Amiral in terms of sector. And this is where our deal flow right now is just exploding in this area. It's still very tied to the second one. Second one we call intelligent industry or smart industry, and everything around supply chain and manufacturing. So robotics, AI again, 3D printing, ERP, supply chain, marketplaces. So everything that helps our manufacturers be more efficient, be more productive. As you remember, I was part of the Table des Manufacturiers Innovants. There was a big initiative from Investissement Québec a couple of years back. And so we were going around the province meeting manufacturers of like porte fenêtre and all these other types. And the technology adoption is still very low. So we think Canadian companies can bring technology to those manufacturers like big time. And that will have probably the single biggest impact. And then the third pillar is related to what I mentioned, right? The double bottom line. Companies are evaluated on EBITDA and carbon emissions. So anything that helps the energy transition for enterprises. And there are so many sectors where like they're not able to measure, they're not able to manage the electricity consumption or the energy consumption that their processes are driving. So yeah. So really like three pillars there that underpins the Amiral thesis, I guess.
Yeah, I like to look back in times or to get some perspective on our thesis. And when I started my own career in it was the beginning of the 2000s, right, where we were just ending the first era of the internet. It was the information era, right? With all the technologies, basically giving you access to any information you like, anywhere, anytime. It was amazing. Then we got the first bubble burst at the time, and then I was doing M&A advisory in New York, and that was 2004, and we were just transitioning to the next era. It was the what we could call the interaction era with all the social networks, development of e-commerce, online marketing, all the sharing platforms, and it was everything was new. It was so exciting to be working in that environment, and today, well, clearly we're transitioning to something else, and I personally believe that we are just at the beginning of a massive new era. We could call the era of simply making the world a better place with technologies. In our case, I mean, we're talking about enterprises, so B2B technologies to help enterprise be simply more productive, more profitable, more sustainable. But it's all those technologies that are helping build something that is better, making business processes smarter, even making humans smarter with new technology tools. So yeah, so I'm really optimistic, and I believe we're really at the perfect place in terms of building a new VC organization in Quebec.
Yeah. So maybe let's dive into what that VC organization is going to look like, right? Because I think, like, well, if people are listening, hey, like, we want to build a new firm, how are we going to do that, right? And you mentioned, the exciting technologies, and the people behind them are going to be the founders and their teams, right? And I see the role of the venture capitalist as, yes, okay, like picking and like investing, but for me, it's like we're the supporting partner of the founder, right? The best founders are going to be able to choose their investors, right? Yeah. So we have to build a firm that becomes that first choice or second choice for that founder. And I think one of the things that excited me about, obviously starting on this journey with you guys is that founder, respect for the founder journey that we talk about, but then what that actually will translate to on the ground, right? Is because beyond just money. So I'd love to hear you guys on your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, but we're all three entrepreneurs, right? That's the spirit of the group here, and obviously, on my side, I think I understand really well what the founders are going through, right? So I've been starting companies from my basement, hiring first employees, winning first customers, fundraising, going through M&A and failing, going through M&A and succeeding, winning customers abroad, building offices abroad. I mean, so all of these, it's a huge roller coaster, right? So and any entrepreneur out there, they know what it is, right? And when you have success, it's like overnight success, but it took 10 years, right? So I think that understanding, the respect for that journey, that it's not always kind of blue sky, and so that's something we understand and we can help them through. and kind of not disappear as soon as things are problematic. So this is I think a big value that the three of us embody. But then it's also being able to help them with the knowledge, right? Like as an example, no deal in 2023, 24 plus will be like a simple, I think, equity structure, right? There's going to be a ton of construct to finance your company, right? And this is where your pre-VC expertise, right, is super useful. Like, how do we structure a deal that has venture debt with this, with that, right?
Yeah, it's always a question of experience, knowledge, and what I believe is also making mistakes, right? I think you could sit on your couch and consume knowledge on the internet and learn about so many things in life and develop yourself a massive knowledge of different things, but at the end of the day, it's also a question of doing it and living the roller coaster and making mistakes. And there's nothing like making mistakes. If you learn from your mistakes, this is where you really are building a significant experience. So in our cases, I mean, we definitely made mistake at Expand Capital. We learned so much about the types of companies you should not be funding, about the type of people you should not be hiring or be working with, the type of deals, what works, what does not work. You need to be making those mistakes to really learn. And today, it's making me a really good fund manager because I know all the best practices. And I'll know all the best practices because I've seen issues, problems, and things that don't work. So it is really valuable, and that's the point of being an entrepreneur, right? It's really living this roller coaster and experimenting with different things. So yeah.
And then you're at, because you've been through, like, PNR was a startup in some way, right? So you went through that roller coaster as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the scar tissue to speak to it, right? So it's like, sleepless nights, making payroll, and going. It was obviously not a VC fundable business, but it was still, like, we had employees and people's lives depending on us. So understanding that, and so going back to, like, the startup journey again, right? So yes, we're a VC fund, but we're in the process of raising, so we're building it a little bit at the same time.
Yeah.
And my personal excitement was like, okay, we're going back on the roller coaster ride that we're currently experiencing. And also, what excites me, maybe my personal why, is the being with you two guys, is this notion of we each have a chip on our shoulder. So it excites me to, like, aller à la bataille, avoir le couteau dans les dents. And what's that expression that, chips in shoulders, put chips in pockets? It's like, I know it's going to work because, like, we're all driving towards these goals. I'd love to hear you guys on maybe, like, your like little personal why.
Well, personal why, it's one, obviously I said, right, the 4 kids at home, to me, like, building a better future for them, that's why I want to do this. Else I could retire, right? But that's definitely not where I'm going in my life. I'm way too young for that. So that's first why. The second why, and maybe why this is a third career as an investor versus, like, starting a third company, it's learning new stuff. So for me, I'm super excited in learning this new world, even though I've done investment and I've been on the other side of the negotiation table. So I think I've seen many term sheets, so don't worry about that. But it's learning from you too, right? And I think what I'm really excited, maybe one of the things that I'm most excited about Amiral is the fact that we have 3 very different profiles. Like, and like, we align on culture and on behavior and all of that, but I think we have un peu caractéristique, là, un chapeau différent. And I know I'm going to learn from Dom, and I know I'm going to learn from you, Nectar. So that's insane.
Well, to me, it's very simple. It's basically it is really the dream job that we are doing. I mean, personally, I grew up being interested in so many things. I had so many passions. When I was young, I loved maths and science just as much as I love doing improv and theater. And today, I love cooking. I love sports. But I decided at one point to go in finance because it was the perfect entry point to the business world. But I never really wanted to be just a finance guy. The finance world today, you can have a fantastic career, of course, but at the end of the day, you're a bit the middleman. Buying or selling stuff for clients, doing advisory, working for someone else. And I rapidly realized that working with startup companies was the best way to build something, to contribute building something. And it was the perfect way for me to get all those passions together, putting them, contributing them to all those different situations, supporting entrepreneurs. It was really my best way to build something. And launching Amiral with you guys, to me, is really the way to build something that is long term, that will be building value. And that will contribute to a lot for our society, hopefully. At least contributing to, right?
Ouais, mais moi, en tout cas, moi, je suis super excité à date. Là. Je trouve que j'ai fait le bon choix, like, en termes de where I want to go. Là. Mais t'as mentionné un point, on en jase, c'est comme, OK, pour une startup, avoir des ambitions, une vision, c'est super important, mais je crois pour un fonds d'investissement aussi. Ouais. Et on en jase un peu, donc je crois qu'on a quand même... On est 3 aujourd'hui, mais on ne veut pas être 3, quand on va closer le fonds, on veut investir nos propres frais de gestion pour embaucher une équipe, avoir du monde en autour de la table pour nous aider. Donc peut-être on peut parler un peu plus de « Hey, where do you want to take this thing? »
Oui, en termes d'équipe. Ben déjà, s'entourer, ça commence. C'est les premières décisions que tu prends comme en affaires, comme entrepreneur, comme nous là, qui démarrons au fond de VC. Les premières décisions, puis les plus importantes décisions, c'est who gets in the bus. Vous avez sûrement lu le livre aussi. Là, c'est pas important de déterminer la destination de l'autobus, c'est get the right people in the bus and it's going to go well. Ouais. Fait puis ça, ce mantra-là, ça a été pour moi la ligne directrice numéro 1 à travers mes 2 startups. Puis, nous, beau, quand on a eu le succès, puis un super exit, quand les gens me disent « Ah, mais vous étiez... comme X années en avance sur vos algos, sur les AI ou sur ci ou sur votre idée. Ouais, mais c'est pas pour ça qu'on a eu du succès. La première raison pour laquelle Nubo a eu du succès, c'est l'équipe. C'est les gens. On est reconnu pour avoir les meilleures personnes dans l'équipe. Puis en payant pas nécessairement autant que certains de nos compétiteurs locaux, mais on avait la meilleure équipe. Puis si tu regardes aujourd'hui la diaspora Nubo, dans quelle startup ils sont rendus, I can tell you they're all top talent. Puis, on est vraiment fiers de ça. Mais fait que ça revient à l'équipe. Puis, donc oui, s'entourer, tous les 3, mais d'avoir des gens autour de nous. Puis c'est certainement comme fonds, il y a une équipe d'investissement qu'on crée autour des fondateurs, mais peut-être encore plus important, c'est d'avoir des gens dans l'équipe qui ne sont pas dans le cycle d'investissement, puis qui sont là pour supporter les startups. Puis ça, c'est un modèle, on a parlé beaucoup entre nous de Georgian, de Axel, de Summit, de ces fonds-là qui ont une équipe d'impact. C'est une clause sine qua non de notre thèse puis de notre façon de fonctionner à Amiral. Donc, c'est d'embaucher des gens qui vont être à disposition des startups dans lesquelles on investit. Puis, Il y a énormément de... Évidemment, on est un nouveau fonds. On n'aura pas 50 personnes dans toutes les différentes fonctions de ce qu'un startup a besoin. Mais pour nous, en investissant en scale-up, là, donc en série A-B, on pense vraiment que l'internationalisation des ventes, le talent, la recherche de talent, puis le positionnement du bon talent au niveau leadership et la valorisation des données puis du data science, c'est les 3 secteurs qui ont le plus d'impact dans la valorisation et le succès d'un startup, d'un scale-up. Fait que c'est les 3 endroits où, heureusement, on a des réseaux avec des rockstars qui veulent nous rejoindre pour prendre ces rôles-là, mais qu'on va staffer rapidement chez Amiral pour amener de la valeur à nos scale-up.
Oui, c'est un changement de paradigme. Hein. Quand même, on le réalise tous les 3, là, mais c'est un changement assez important quand même qu'on apporte dans l'industrie du VC en apportant une nouvelle firme, un nouveau fonds, avec évidemment des nouvelles poches de capital, mais avec un souci de contribuer de l'expertise puis d'avoir du staff interne. Fred l'a bien expliqué, d'avoir une équipe interne dédiée au succès de nos entreprises, payer à même les frais de gestion du fonds qu'on reçoit, c'est foncièrement différent de ce que plusieurs font. Il y a des beaux succès, là, effectivement, là, qu'on voit autour de nous, à l'extérieur du Québec, mais il n'y a pas de raison qu'on n'ait pas ça non plus au Québec. Fait qu'on... on risque peut-être de froisser ou de déplaire à certains parce que bien souvent, quand on connaît beaucoup de succès dans l'industrie du VC, il y a certaines organisations qui deviennent des machines à lever des fonds, puis à partir des fonds, puis à vivre essentiellement de leurs frais de gestion. Et évidemment, qui vont apporter des bons résultats, là, peut-être, là, mais qui bâtissent des masses relativement importantes de frais de gestion. Puis nous, on veut vraiment le mettre à contribution de nos entreprises avec des zones de création de valeur qui sont vraiment très, très spécifiques. Puis ça, je suis vraiment, vraiment excité parce que on ne peut plus d'accord avec l'importance de le people first. Comme Fred, tu le disais, c'est pas juste nous dans notre équipe, ça va être dans nos critères d'investissement également. Bien souvent, dans les entreprises qu'on va financer, le facteur numéro 1, ça va être la qualité de l'équipe de gestion. Puis c'est ça qu'on va vouloir viser. Fait que, il y a des gens d'une extrême qualité de l'autre côté de la table. On veut avoir des gens d'une extrême qualité de notre côté également pour bâtir des situations puis bâtir des grandes entreprises. Je pense que c'est ça un point, si c'est pas le point le plus important pour Amiral aujourd'hui.
Ça devient ça devient le modèle, le framework Amiral aussi. Puis je sais que tu as beaucoup de ces points-là dans ta tête avec tout ce que tu as vu chez PNR de post-investissement. La complexité, c'est pas de bâtir une stratégie. Tout le monde bâtit une stratégie. Puis j'aimerais ça t'entendre un petit peu plus double-cliquer sur OK, comment on passe à l'exécution. Puis c'est quoi ces défis-là? Parce que c'est ça qu'on veut mettre en place dans notre pratique Amiral.
Oui, non, absolument. C'est sûr, ça peut être une longue conversation, mais tout simplement, c'est le starting point, vous l'avez mentionné à quelques reprises, c'est people. Ouais. C'est ça la partie plus tough. C'est pas, OK, c'était l'objectif, on veut croître par X%, etc. C'est comment est-ce que tout le monde autour de la table regarde et rame dans la bonne direction. T'sais. Et des fois, c'est des choses très sous-conscientes. Comprendre que la compréhension d'objectifs à un niveau détaillé n'est pas toujours si évident. Et avoir un processus, un mécanisme de rétroaction et de candeur autour de la table pour dire, hey guys, on se regarde un peu dans les blancs des yeux, et on se dit les vraies choses quand ça va pas bien. Et aussi quand ça va bien. Vraiment comprendre un niveau plus profond et ajuster en cours de route. Donc, ça, c'est un peu les principes que j'ai appris là, à un niveau macro, comme de 64,000 foot view. Là. C'est pas... It's not complicated to understand, but it's complicated to put in place. Because it's like the culture, the people, it's all these things that are they're like easy to put on a PowerPoint slide, and then, you wake up Monday morning, and then, you know. One of the things that really excites me, like as we're embarking on this journey, is thinking about our own strategy, right? So we're starting a VC fund from scratch. It's like a white canvas. So it's super cool to say, like, if you're building a VC fund in 2023, 2024, from first principles, how do you generate return? How do you make it a success, right? So I've been thinking a lot about ideas of like using software to help propel us. That's maybe on the value creation side. But I'd love to hear you guys in terms of like how you think about our strategy, with the things that you think are going to make Amiral a success.
Yeah, there are so many things. Obviously, timing, and I'm sure Dom will talk about timing of the 2024 vintage. But one area that is critical is deal flow, right? Is you win as a VC when you have access to the best entrepreneurs and the best deals, and because of our position in the market, personally, all three of us and I guess on my side, I see it on every day is being. I think entrepreneurs see me as an entrepreneur just like them, and I've been on their side for so long that I get access to just as advisor to a lot of these companies. So and typically the relationship starts like that, and so more than half of my deal flow comes as me helping these guys as an advisor before even investing, being a coach, being in an accelerator, an incubator, being a mentor. So that's a big piece. And when I look then at, okay, we get this deal flow, how do we create value and return? Is typically I see Canadian technology entrepreneurs as good at product, good at tech, not as much in commercialization. There's a huge white space, huge potential in taking Canadian technology and selling it internationally. And I mean, my two companies, we were 90% plus exports, right? So to me, selling in Russia, selling in Japan, selling in Asia, selling in Europe, selling in the US, this is how we create value. So I guess that's one piece of the puzzle, and I'm sure you have a bunch of.
Well, it's a good segue to that question of timing in the markets at the moment. I mean, we're in 2023, October 2023. It's been a tough year so far. 2023. It's not a very nice year to be fundraising as a business. Not a nice year to be fundraising as a fund. A lot of people are nervous in the market, but still, I think it remains a perfect timing to be launching a new fund because there was a shift, there was a massive adjustment of valuations in the market, and there's the sentiment is quite different. There's a back to basics or back to fundamentals that we are seeing in the market, and this is really what we want to be doing. I mean, 3 years ago, with the valuations of the time, I'm not sure we would be launching Amiral. Valuations were simply crazy, and today, I mean, it's perfect timing. It's a perfect storm of great conditions to launch a fund, and there's also that question of. There's also that question of capital. I mean, interest rates are going up. Capital is even more rare than it used to be. It's really an interesting opportunity to be in the market at the moment, to be providing capital to great companies. And I think that my final point would be because I completely agree with Fred. I mean, we're building great businesses. We want to be creating value on the long term. We want to build sustainable companies. We want to build great teams with entrepreneurs. But at the end of the day, I think that the three of us we agree on one super important point. It's called the fiduciary duty to your investor, because we're at the end of the day we're investing other people's money. Being good fund managers, the three of us, it's having that mindset clearly in our minds, because this is how you are building a strong financial organization.
And trust.
Yeah, the trust piece I think is the most important, right? Because we spoke a lot about people on this podcast, but it's like the human element. Like, even though we're building, like technology companies, we're helping to build technology companies, and it's like all about software and coding. It's like the trust piece and the people piece ends up being the most important, right? So like trust with your LPs, trust with your founders, trust with your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know what, it's super long to build that trust. I mean, we know each other. We all trust each other with it goes back to 2014.
For next 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. And it is super long. So we need to be patient, and we need to be, to be close to our values, all those values that we are sharing.
And maybe my perspective also in terms of like long-term ambition, right? Like building this like generational franchise here that we want to like have, like more people around the table, have offices in other cities, etc. I think that's something that's exciting. It's like, hey, we want to also go big, right? It's kind of like part of the VC game itself.
Yeah, no doubt. Mais le nom, le nom Amiral, je le répète, mais je sais que vous le savez très bien. On l'a pas choisi par hasard. Là, on veut créer des flagships. On veut qu'Amiral, nous-mêmes, devenions un flagship. Puis en français, c'est vaisseau amiral. Donc, c'est assez c'est intéressant aussi. Ton nouveau podcast, c'est maintenant le Flagship podcast.
You could choose the name well, yeah.
Ouais.
Mais c'est sûr, clairement. On n'est pas là pour bâtir, on n'est pas là pour lever un fonds, right? On est en train de lever un fonds. On est en train de le faire là maintenant, mais on est là pour bâtir une organisation, right? On est là pour bâtir, une équipe. Fait que, avec combien de fonds qu'on va réussir à lever dans les 20 ou 25 prochaines années, on verra bien. Mais oui, on est là pour bâtir une organisation solide, une nouvelle offre de services dans le milieu, du VC au Canada. Puis moi, je me sens privilégié de le faire avec vous deux, les boys.
Ouais.
Yeah, maybe a good way to close off the conversation, guys. I think we hit upon quite a few good points. So I'll throw it to you. Any final words of wisdom, closing thoughts?
Well, I guess it's more it's a call to founders, right? We meet with founders, entrepreneurs on a weekly basis. We know they are passionate. And it's exciting to see. And I guess my closing comment would be like, we want to talk to you guys. Like come over. Let's have a discussion. We're extremely interested in helping. I guess this is where we are in our journey is helping out the ecosystem, helping the companies, whether we're a fit or not. To invest, so whether the timing is good or not to invest, we'll always have our door open and be there to support them and be honest about it. So.
Ouais, moi je pense aussi aux générations montantes de l'entrepreneuriat. Je pense à ceux qui sont en train de démarrer un projet, bâtir leur entreprise, à ceux qui sont déjà bien avancés, mais aussi à ceux qui sont pas là du tout, qui ont même pas encore décidé de devenir entrepreneur, peut-être qu'ils vont le faire dans 2-3 ans. Je pense à mes propres enfants, même mes 2 filles. Puis si elles veulent devenir entrepreneurs un jour, ben je veux qu'elles aient à leur disposition des gens d'expérience autour d'eux. Je pense que la clé de notre offre à nous trois, c'est notre expérience, ce qu'on a vécu, les choses qu'on a vécues, les choses qu'on a faites, les erreurs qu'on a faites, comme je le disais tout à l'heure. Il y a le financier, investisseur professionnel, le tech guy qui connaît la technologie mieux que personne, notre gars de création de valeur, post-investment. On a autour de la table un partnership extrêmement fort, extrêmement puissant, je pense, et on peut apporter énormément à tous ceux qui décident de faire le saut en entrepreneuriat. Moi, c'est à ces gens-là que je pense. Puis appelez-nous, comme Fred dit, venez nous voir, posez des questions. Puis si c'est pas aujourd'hui, c'est peut-être dans 5 ans. We never know.
Yeah, it goes back to, it takes a village, right, they say? So it's like, going back to this notion of building a strong ecosystem, a community. It's not just about the dollars and the big exits. It's about, hey, helping people, helping founders with cool ideas succeed. I think is really a cool driving force.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Hey, thanks, Nectar.
Merci, les gars.